Godesky. Welcome back to the Trails Collective interview series. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm excited to be back. Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well. I'm at home now, so I'm excited to be sleeping in my bed again tonight.
So, speaking of sleep, have you had any nightmares?
No, so this has been much better. I haven't had the same hallucinations or anything that I did after the long trail, but I haven't been able to get like a solid night of sleep yet. So I think it's just disruptive when you do a few days of like 2 to 3 hours at a time. So but I can tell I think it'll happen soon. I think I'm ready for that full night soon.
Is it just your body is very sore and you can't because you're in pain, or is it just like your mind doesn't shut off?
I think it's mostly it's a little bit of both, I guess. Like I'll fall asleep fine because I'm so tired, and then yeah, I wake up like anywhere from like 4 or 5 hours later, and I'm like pretty wide awake. And I think it just got used to that like short sleep pattern a little bit. But then I wake up and I'm still feeling tired, but like the thing that's really bad is like the pain. So it's like okay, like my feet and my toes and my ankles and stuff were just like throbbing, especially those first few nights. So then once I started feeling that, I was like, now I can't fall asleep because that's just like hurting so bad. So I'd get up, walk around, like maybe take a bath. No one else would be awake yet. So I'm just like twiddling my thumbs for a while. And then finally I hear someone else and I'm like, oh, someone else is awake. Talk to me.
You got to get some friends overseas or something.
I know. That's a good point. That's
The
totally a
people
good
that I
point.
talk to.
Yeah.
So you just set the FKT on the Adirondack 46ers. So congratulations.
Thank
In
you.
3 days and 16 hours.
Yep. In 16 minutes.
Okay, so that's a pretty long time. I want to go through it. So let's just start at the beginning. What time did you start?
I started at 4 a.m. on Monday, the 17th.
Okay, and so did everything mostly go to plan, or did you have to reroute it all?
No, I didn't reroute it all. Everything, I definitely had like weather blowing in and out and everything like that, but nothing major enough that caused me to need to reroute. The only like, it was like close as I was getting towards Algonquin. Thunderstorms were kind of like in the forecast. And so I guess that's a concern because Algonquin has an iron core, so they don't really want people like up there during a thunderstorm. And so, but I was like looking at timing, I was totally fine and clear of that. So that was like the only time where I was like, shoot, like that would be a reroute I would have had to have made, but got lucky with the timing and everything else worked out pretty much. You know, I was running into a lot of rain, but other than that, like no major issues.
When you started, did you feel like you prepared adequately, or like after the first day or maybe the first couple hours, were you like, okay, my body's ready for this, or were you like, ooh, I'm a little bit like maybe I should have been out here more or something?
No, I felt really good. Like I was starting with a segment that I had already seen. Like it would be quite a while in day one before I got to something I hadn't seen totally. And so I just felt really comfortable and familiar with what I was doing at first. And my body felt good. My goal was to keep it very conservative in those first couple of days anyway. And so, you know, luckily a conservative pace was feeling easy. So that was good. You know, the worst is when you're trying to be conservative and if that's feeling hard, that's like a little bit of an alert. I think that's not ideal to start out with, but I felt really good. And honestly, like those last couple weeks leading into it had just been so hectic with like the planning and the last minute packing and all of the things that need to get done to like successfully kind of do a 3.5 day adventure like that, right? And so when it started, it was kind of like, thank goodness, now all I need to do is like run. So my mind actually just felt really good in that sense. Like I didn't have a million things scrolling through of like, I need to do this, I need to do this still. It was just like, okay, time to go hike and run.
So do you find you like to do all the logistics, like the food and the gear and all that stuff, or is it more something that you're like, I'd rather just run?
I'd rather just run. But so like if anyone, if I could hire like out the position of the logistics coordinator, that would be lovely. But at the same time, like while it's not my favorite part of it, I actually wouldn't really hire it out because one, that would be silly. But two, doing that stuff makes me learn the route forward and backwards. It makes me learn like what I'm fueling with forward and backwards. It makes me learn my pacing fuel forward and backwards and like all of those little things that I want to happen over those days. I know them so well because I've like literally made this binder for my crew of instructions and directions and like things like that. And so it's one of those things where it's like going through those motions really makes it so that when I'm out there, it's like I've already like been through the motions of the whole thing. Now I'm just like physically doing it. But being able to like to do all that planning is really important for me to feel like I know 100% what I'm doing. And then I can take ownership. Like if a route needs to change or something needs to happen, like I know enough to be able to work with that, and I wouldn't be like, you know, a deer in headlights and then kind of panicking and losing time because I wasn't, you know, 100% sure of what was going on.
Mm-hmm. So everything that you did plan, did things go mostly to plan? Like, did you sleep when you thought you were going to sleep? Did you, you know, how did things go?
Yeah, I was actually, so I was like super conservative with my estimated pacing on day one. And so I did end up coming in about an hour ahead of like where I thought I could be. And so, but again, I had kind of said like, I might be an hour ahead. And so they were like, you know, the crew was prepared for that and ready. And that was like, that was a good thing. I kind of wanted a little bit more of a time cushion for day two, just in case, because that was like a longer segment of trail I hadn't seen yet. So, but yeah, I mean, so I was actually ahead, which is like never something that is like not going, you know, like if you think not going to plan, you think usually behind, right? And so for me to like actually be ahead a little bit, that was really good. And I had like my crew, at least they haven't told me if there was like massive things that weren't going to plan on their end. So it seemed like, you know, they, of course there's always little hiccups and traffic things and road reroutes and whatever. But they were able to deal with it with no sweat. So for the most part, I think, yeah, things were logistically like happening as we thought they would.
Well, that's comforting, I bet. How were things going with your body?
Yeah, so I mean, I was tired, but it was normal. Like, you know, I was lucky I didn't have any major spills or like you know, I definitely fell, but nothing more than like, ouch, like that hurts, let me walk this off type of thing. You know, I rolled my ankle, but it wasn't major, so that was good. And so those things I would say are probably par for course, like in the Adirondacks, you know, not, you just are going to expect that kind of thing to happen. But otherwise my body held up really well. Like it felt just, you know, sometimes you, especially with climbing, I think it's easy when you're doing a lot of vert to like favor one side and to really either on the ascent or the descent to like just be subconsciously or unconsciously favoring one side, and then 20 miles later, like that's really pulling or bothering you or something like that. But I did quite a bit of strength work and stuff leading into this. So I think that really helped make a difference with keeping me like even and not favoring a certain side. And that I think just really helped overall. Like on the long trail, I know by the end, my right quad, like every mile I was stopping to massage it and try and like work things out and things like that. And I was kind of just waiting for that to happen. And, you know, it didn't this time. So it's hard to say exactly like what that magic part was. But that in that sense, everything muscularly felt really good. My feet definitely took a beating. But again, like I was kind of expecting worse, to be honest. So I was just really proactive in terms of changing my socks, and I had great shoes. Like I wear the VJ shoes, which don't get super soggy and wet. So I think that helped keep them as dry as they could be during the day. And was just, yeah, I went through so many pairs of socks, but I think it helped. And, you know, no matter what, again, like with that kind of climbing, your toes are just going to like be begging for mercy, I feel like. But, you know, I wasn't going into it expecting my toes to feel good. So I guess that was kind of the mental thing that I had there. And when things didn't feel as bad as I expected they could, it was like a win. So that was good.
Yeah, I've had like one of my toes has like a reoccurring, well, I had an infected toe like a while ago,
Oh,
and it like the scar tissue gets reinflamed every once in a while. And now that I'm in this period of sort of foundation slash off season, and I'm only
yep.
running like, you know, less than 30 miles a week, it's like healed. And so now I'm like, oh, I forget that my feet can feel so good.
Yep. I know, right? It's like my feet probably just grew back now, like 2 years worth of skin that I had shaved off during the long trail. And now I was expecting it to all go away, but it's, it's not too bad. Just, in small places, it's a little rough still.
So I did see your Instagram post today about your shoes. I had never heard of that brand before. So where did you find them?
So when I was in the Adirondacks last September, starting to scout trails and stuff, I was like slip sliding all over the place. I was actually, for the long trail, I wore Ultras and Sauconys. They're like trail shoes, and they were fine on the long trail. Like I didn't think I needed anything different. And then when I took them to the Adirondacks, I was sliding all over the place. I like could not keep like upright. I was terrified to go down the slick rocks and everything with those shoes. So I took a look at what Ryan Atkins was wearing when he did his record attempt, and I was like, oh, seems like they must be good, right? And it made sense because VJ shoes, a lot of obstacle racers and Spartan racers use them, and so they're wet all the time. They need really good grip, right? So I was like, okay, maybe they're onto something. And sure enough, I put them on, and I was like, oh, this is like what I've been looking for. So they're really comfortable, and I like them. And they also, it's nice, like, as a triathlete, swim run is actually becoming a big thing, and they're good swim run shoes too. So
Yeah.
I'll be able to wear them when events come back and I'm doing swim run. Hopefully that would be.
Are you going to do that? I've only heard about it through, I listened to the Rich Roll podcast. And so like 2 years ago, he did one, Odlo or Otello.
Otello, yeah.
Yeah.
They say it like properly in Europe, but I say Otello.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I have heard of duathlons, and I was like, I could actually do that, but the swim run,
no. Are you not a swimmer?
I can stay afloat, but
okay.
Like, that's it. I just have never been taught to swim or anything like that. So
yeah, the swim run's actually cool because you can use paddles and a pull buoy, and so like for someone who's a newer swimmer, it's actually better than like straight triathlon swimming because you have like these toys that are inherently going to make you like more buoyant and faster. And then my boyfriend and I were signed up as a team to do one in October in North Carolina, and it's not happening, but I definitely I did a small like sprint one last season, and it was super, super fun. So I am excited to get into that a little bit.
Quite the bonding experience, just like
staying tethered to each other.
You have a fight before the start, and you're just like, all right, bye. Just like hook on to someone else.
Just be dead weight for the swim. He has to drag me through it.
Yeah, that would, oh my God. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. I mean, it sounds cool. All these new things that are coming out, which is, pretty nice. I mean, I think it's important to be like a well-balanced athlete. And so, and swimming is great for cross training.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really good recovery and cross training. So I'll keep it in for now. It's not my favorite, but I keep it in.
So Ryan, specifically, his FKT was 3 days and 5 hours. So I know you sort of had that like in the back of your mind. Did you like try to stay at that pace, or like what ended up happening that, I mean, obviously you still set the FKT for the female but what was the idea there?
Yeah, I had a pretty good idea. I mean, Strava is a pretty good indicator if you are putting things in, and you can like see what Ryan did and what I did on certain stuff. And so I knew that most likely, unless day 3 ended up being way like easier and faster than I expected it to be, I wasn't going to be able to like really be within, even a handful of hours of that time. What I thought was realistic for myself was like around that 3.5 to a little bit more time range. So, I definitely had it in the back of my mind, but I also I wasn't going out necessarily on his pace or anything like that. Like I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to be able to, do my route with my pacing at like what I felt I could be pushing myself to do. And, I will say though, like, so day 3 happened, that day was actually much slower than I expected. And so I was like, okay, that's definitely not, like, Ryan's record's way out of reach now. But I was like, oh, but like the other couple guys up there, like I can actually probably still beat them. So that was when I started to make decisions to like cut down my sleep and really like keep pushing to try and at least get like second on the leaderboard for it.
So I remember when we talked the first time, you said that when you watched Nikki Kimball's documentary on the Long Trail, you picked out places where you were like, I could knock time off there. I could knock time off there.
Mm-hmm.
Having done this once, are there places or areas where you're like, oh, I could definitely knock an hour or so off there or something like that? Do you have an interest in trying it again?
It's probably too soon for me to say yes or no on that, but I could definitely be more efficient, right? I mean, just alone, I chose to go up into the Dix Range from Elk Road or Elk Lake. And so Elk Lake now has like a hunt club or something that's closed because of COVID. And so you actually have to park like 2 miles further. So in a non-COVID year, when that's open right away, like I'm 2 miles further up the road. Right. So like that alone is like, okay, that's like easy time, even if you kept my exact route the same. So that's something for sure. And I think, again, in a non-COVID year, if you could really max out like support systems and pacers and things like that and have people like super fresh, because the pacing job's so hard, like asking people to be carrying all that water and all that food and weight for so long and to be able to push at the pace you want themselves, like it's so honestly, it's really hard to find those people who would be able to do that for long stretches. So if you could have more people and like really maybe like trade off more, I guess, like more of a relay with the pacers to push myself, like I think I definitely felt like I could probably push some sections a little bit more. That said, like it's easy to be like, oh, I could have pushed that more, but would I have paid for that day 3, day 4, right? So you just don't know. But it is intriguing to be like, I think some things could definitely go faster. And when we started, Sarah and I thought we had like a perfect weather window, and it ended up being pretty crappy out there for a lot of the days, like really wet and stormy. And I think some of that's just normal, but if it was like magically not like that for a few days, then it could definitely be faster.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Were you with someone the entire time?
No, I did a couple segments on my own. So the first day I was dropped off at the lodge, and I met my pacer up on Wright, which was the first climb of the day. And then the other time I was alone was in the Dix Range. So I had someone climb up Macomb with me, and then I did the Dix Range to the bottom of Dix by myself. So that was definitely a longer stretch. It was probably 4 hours or so on my own. And that was different from the long trail. Like the long trail, I definitely had someone with me every step of the way. So doing that was in a way nice to like show myself like, okay, I can go on my own too. I guess I was alone for a little bit as my boyfriend stopped to like refill waters and flasks and stuff like that at the brook, and I just did the out and back on Haystack by myself.
Did you have any low moments out there where you were like, all right, it's been 2 days and this adventure just isn't seeming so great now?
I think I knew what I was in for. Like I knew how bad it was going to suck, to put it bluntly. So, that didn't catch me by surprise. But there was definitely times when I was like, can I see these rocks and these roots and these like this technical trail for 2 whole more days? Like coming in on the second night, that was the night when I was camping. So like camping's fine and like comfortable-ish, but it's like when you have 50 plus miles or whatever cumulatively on your body, and you're like lying on that little air mattress mat thing, and it's cold, and like your body's just like screaming for like a soft cushion, that's when you're like, and it's always that question of like, what are things going to feel like when I am trying to stand up in the morning, or 3 hours later, basically. But like every time I would have that moment, and then I would actually be standing up after I slept a little bit, like I always felt better than I thought I would. And so that always helped like turn things around a little bit each time I was getting going. The climb up Colden on day 3, having done the Great Range, having done Cliff and Redfield, like that Colden climb is just so long and such a steady grade that you don't get any sort of break on your muscles or your legs. Like it's just constant. And so that was like, I could feel like if I put my hands on my quads as I'm climbing, to like push, and I could feel like my quads were just on fire. Like literally you could feel the like temperature on them. And I'm like, oh, like, you know, and again, it's just that question of like, this hurts so bad. Like, are they going to hold up, you know?
Mhm.
So mentally I felt like I was actually holding up pretty good and doing okay. But there was definitely those times when I was like, physically, like, I hope the system keeps working, you know? And luckily I think I had the rest planned where that was enough to get me to bounce back each time.
Are most of the times that you've ever had to like drop out of a race or quit been more physical or mental?
So I haven't done it too much, and it's been more physical for sure. Like one time I just had become so dehydrated, like it just didn't make sense. It really probably wasn't safe for me to go on. And same with the other time, really. I just like had kind of dropped the ball on that stuff. So, um, you know, but the two probably go hand in hand, right? Like, could I have also been like, you know what, I'm going to camp out at an aid station for 30 minutes and then get my nutrition under control and then go on, you know, probably. But the fact that I was probably out of it, out of my like mental game too, made me just kind of, you know, step off at that point. So, yeah, I'd say that they probably go hand in hand.
I remember when I first found out that people actually stay at aid stations for like a long time. And I was like, why? Like
I
I'm
know.
usually just like in and out. Like I mean, change my socks, but like I mean, maybe I just haven't gone long enough. But like some people like stay there for like a half an hour, and I'm like, what are you doing there? Like what? Like I just am like in, you know, soup and then out, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, apparently it's a good time. But you know, I would
If you
if I
start
was
to
a
do the
guest that.
math though on that, you're like, okay, 5 minutes in aid station, 10 minutes, 10 like aid stations, and you're like, that's almost an hour, you know?
Yeah.
So if you do, you know, 5 minutes is a lot, like, let alone, you're right. Some people are there all day, but I think, you know, I guess we all do it for different reasons. So
And I mean, what spurs me to the finish line is that I'll get to sit there. Like if I sat at an aid station, I'd be like, well, here we, I'm not getting up, you know? So
yeah, it'd be like an icicle.
yeah, it would be like my legs start to seize if I stop moving.
Yeah, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about things that were hard, but what was like the best part, or what things did you think were going to be really hard, but ended up, oh, this is actually kind of easy
Yeah, I think
here?
I thought the sleep deprivation, like I was so scared of the sleep deprivation side again, just after struggling with it so much on in Vermont. And I think that maybe it's because it is a day and a half shorter, so it didn't really like quite hit me yet, but I felt really strong, like even going into those last couple sections. And so that was awesome. And I think the fact that like I could tell that I was feeling stronger than ever, even given like a lack of sleep, was like motivating and giving me adrenaline to keep going and stuff like that. So that was really good. And then I guess you never know, like, especially when you get tired on trails like that, it's like, how are my trail legs going to work? Like, am I going to maintain my ability to do technical stuff and to move at like a pretty good pace? Like, not really necessarily be bombing down anything, but like, am I going to keep light feet enough to like keep moving swiftly through things? And that was again like more than I expected. I didn't have moments where I was like really just dragging on the technical stuff, and I think that surprised me too, that I was able to keep moving through that.
You know, I was discussing this a little bit ago. Just we were talking about the FKTs and just your the differences between your and Sarah's mindset, and it's kind of just she seems like she takes the approach of like she's lived in the Adirondacks. This is like a really big thing on her. Like she wants to conquer the mountains, kind of, or like
Mm-hmm.
just she loves being out there, and it's kind of a like more spiritual thing, a
Yep.
little bit. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but then when I talk to you, it's a little different. It's more of like, you know, like the karaoke thing we talked about, it's
Yeah.
there. So, you know, or just like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty cool. But I don't feel like you take it to this level that's like it hedges, like you're just physically, you're emotionally attached to it. It's more like another goal that you want to challenge yourself with. And I think that's both mindsets are wonderful. They both have spurred you guys to do amazing things. But I think that what attracts me to your mindset a little bit is that like if you had failed or had, you know, not completed it or something, I think maybe you would have been like, all right, I'll try it again. Or like, okay, I tried, but like it wouldn't crush you. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's probably why, or tell me if I'm wrong, that you had such like success. You're just able to sort of bounce back a little bit quicker. Whereas some trail runners that or ultra runners that just tie a lot of worth into one goal. And then if it doesn't go according to plan, it kind of crushes them for a little bit. And I think I've been in both areas at different points. Have you ever had a race or a goal where like you tied so much of your identity or so much of something into it, and maybe it did or didn't go according to plan?
It's a good question. You know, like listening to you kind of talk like about that, you know, I think you're right, because I think I've raced so much, you know, like I started racing when I was 19 or 20, and have done just between triathlon and ultra marathons, like so many. So in a way, like the sport itself and like the endurance lifestyle is kind of what I'm attached to, and what, like, you know, I'm definitely wanting to keep a part of me and things like that. But I think you're right that it's not one specific race. It's not one specific trail necessarily that's like, you know, going to break my heart or not. You know, it's just the overall act of being able to get out there and compete for the best that I can do. And then as long as I have that, I'm okay. Because, you know, I feel like as an athlete, you learn that like sports have no soul, right? Like they're going to break your heart like one way or another, whether it's like watching them or participating in them or whatever, right? So like they don't care that you've trained your whole lifetime for this. They don't care that you grew up there. They don't care that like where, you know, if you're from, you know, Antarctica and you come to the Adirondacks to run, right? So like the fact that, you know, for me, it's more about just getting out there, doing like pushing myself and seeing what I'm made of. And, you know, part of that though, I will say, people, I get, you know, it's funny, like I'll get emails from people who say like, you should run this trail, or you should do this one next, or you should do this one next. And I'm like, meh, you know, and honestly, I'm like, meh, meh, meh. Like,
No,
these are all great, right? Like,
I have like a journal of just like, you should do this, you should do
yeah.
this. Like, thanks.
I know, I'm like, okay, you know, and smile and nod, but like, and I appreciate like everyone reaching out and like saying things like that. And like, sometimes I do get ideas from that, right? But for the most part, like, you know, to find what like fires me up is like, again, like, I don't know what fired me up so much about the long trail. I don't know what fired me up so much about doing the Adirondacks, but I think like, you know, I'm able to like connect with something, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going all in, I'm doing it, but I still have that broader sense of like the connection to who I am is bigger than that one trail. And so I think you're right that it's probably like a Venn diagram of sorts, like how those two overlap and where that connection is. But I do think that that's part of the reason why I've been able to make a career that's pretty long with endurance sports. And, you know, knock on wood, it's hopefully not ending anytime soon. But I think, yeah, like realizing that, you know, it could break your heart if you're just too far into it. And so finding, you know, the bigger picture, I think, has been just an important part of what I've done from the beginning.
Yeah, I've always there's something, one of my favorite writers about sports, Peter Bronca, said like the marathon doesn't owe you anything. Like
Exactly.
It does not owe you a thing.
Yep.
And I think I've been injured or not even injured, just like had niggles or had to take time off like enough times, not a lot, but enough times that now when I find like myself getting anxiety or feel like I should be doing this or I should run more, it's like, first, I'm glad that I can run and get out the door. And so I shouldn't be greedy about trying to do all these things. And
Yep.
I think my maturing as a runner and an athlete in general is that like, you know, just it's when you go like, just because I can probably win that race doesn't mean that I should go do it if I don't want to go do it, or like the motivation isn't right.
Totally. There's a woman, Steph Jagger. She wrote a memoir called, what's it called? I have it on my bookshelf if I could like find it. I might have to like email it to you or something afterwards. I think it's called, maybe I'll just Google it really quick if you don't mind.
No, yeah, I'm all about the books.
Her memoir, so she does goal setting. Oh, Unbound, that's what it's not, I wanted to say Unbroken, but it's Unbound, a story of snow and self-discovery. So it's a cool book to pick up and read. But she does this goal setting process, and it's kind of like along these lines of like, you don't want to make your goal the race, right? You don't want to make the goal the place. Like, you want to make your goal who you want to be or like how you want to feel and like those kinds of things, and then back into it from there. And if your race or something like is part of the stepping stone, then that's great, but like your end goal shouldn't be that achievement necessarily. And so I probably, hopefully I haven't butchered too much like how she explains it, but it's pretty cool. Like if people are, you know, if that resonates with people, like look at Steph Jagger's goal setting processes.
Yeah, I appreciate setting goals, especially because my goals are really low bar. Like everything is like I keep a training journal, and in the beginning of the
Uh-huh.
week it says like goal for the week, and like I think this morning I wrote do all of my hurdle drills. Like do
Yes.
that's it. Like no running, like just do them, even if they're ugly or whatever.
Yeah.
Do it. And you know, so I think I like setting the low bar. It's like putting something easy on your to-do list first, just so you can cross it off and give you some
Exactly.
momentum. Because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I can do this process goal, and then hopefully it'll help out with the running. But if I accomplish this, that's great.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Keep the bars not too low with all things, but yeah, like give yourself those gimmies and then it builds up to something big.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little bit of like push the domino first and then let
Right.
it go.
Yeah.
So did you have like on the long trail or during races, do you have like little goals, like maybe get to mile 30 or like, you know, make sure that I'm taking a goo an hour or something like that that like help get you through? Because you were out there for 3 days and 16 hours. So something had to keep propelling you through.
Yeah, I mean, I told my crew that like every 20 minutes, I was like, tell me every 20 minutes, and like I'll either slow down if it's like slowable terrain to eat and drink, or you know, we'll stop and I'll eat and drink something. So like those 20-minute segments were like a lot of 20-minute segments over 3.5 days, basically. So that was one thing, and then I definitely never like stopped to think about the whole thing, right? So like it was quite hard going into day 3 when it was just that big chunk of like 34 miles before I would see like the crew again. And so, you know, the saving grace to that was one crew member was hiking in after 20 miles to deliver some some food to us. So but again, like that 20-mile chunk even was like, whoo, that's like a long stretch. So this was actually pretty cool because you could break it up like peak by peak and be like, okay, just get to the next one, just get to the next one, you know, and those segments are pretty short because it's like, okay, like a mile or two up, a mile or two down, and then like just compartmentalize that way. So I was definitely doing a lot of that. The bushwhacking sections are like good to break things up too. Like it's like, okay, get to the bushwhack, do the bushwhack, and then like, okay, peak by peak after that kind of thing. So I think, you know, it was definitely easier to break it up here than it was on the long trail where it was like, okay, like giant stretches of trail. And yeah, that was huge. If I had been counting down from like 160 miles down to one, like each time, I would have lost my mind. I think that would have been a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I think also with this time of like no races and stuff like that, like I know my teammates and I, like we have building segments, but like there's no real like, ah, I just did that at the end of the segment because we don't have a race, or like, you know, we're still doing foundational stuff and like it's not that exciting. So, but you know, I look back and it's like, okay, well that might prepare me for the next time, or like this segment I learned this. So like even let's say you didn't like like maybe you didn't finish an FKT or you didn't finish something, it's, well, you got a really good training stimulus, so that'll help you for the next time.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the training to a lot of times, like with Ironman, you know, we encourage athletes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like it's a big thing to have to race 2 Ironmans a year, but like your odds of getting that perfect race that one time of the year is so slim. But, you know, and a lot of times you see an athlete who has this great build, everything's right. And then the race, it's like, right. So, but like, you have to remember, like you want that victory lap, right? You want all of that, but it's really all of that work that puts in, that's the cumulative effort, that's the important stuff. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I am. I don't want to like be like what's next, because I don't think you should think about that personally.
Right.
But like, so what are you going to do in your recovery? So how long do you traditionally take off? Let's talk about that, because I think it's important for athletes to know that like it seems like everybody's just doing FKTs and long efforts every week, but actually it's more just like we have more access to people doing a bunch of different things. So it seems like everybody is, but so I imagine you're going to take some time off. So what's that going to look like for you?
Yeah, I'll still like be getting in some movement and stuff, and doing like a lot of dog walks, a lot of dog hikes. Like my poor dog, you know, part of it was the summertime weather here, but like she's in desperate need of some bonding time, I think, and walks and hikes and stuff. So nothing extreme, that's for sure. I have like you know, no real like goals for myself for the next plan, like year really. Like if my coach and I have talked, if I don't feel like doing anything again through the end of the year, then I won't do anything through the end of the year.
Bask in your glory.
I know, right? It's like, oh, I can like, I don't know, phone bank for the election or something, right?
Yeah,
like spend some time doing that sort of thing was
Bake
some of my
some
goals.
sourdough.
Yeah, my boyfriend's actually going to make an attempt at FKT, the Appalachian Trail through Shenandoah National Park. So it's like a few miles over 100 miles, and so he'll be doing that later this fall. And so I'm gonna get to be on the other side of things, crewing and pacing for him, which will be fun. So I gotta make sure I like have some semblance of trail legs to be able to do that. But yeah, I do a lot of like cross training. I'll get back on my bike a little bit, stay in the pool, and mostly it's kind of like, well, I'll take a good like month of not a lot of pounding and stuff, at least, like even if I feel great tomorrow, right? And then from there, it's just kind of like, okay, we'll see how things go. But my coach, Hillary Biscay, is like super cognizant of the like hormonal effects and just the systemic effects that like an effort like that takes. And so until I'm like sleeping regularly and like have a couple weeks where like with minimal activity where everything just feels normal, right, we wouldn't get into anything super crazy. Because after the long trail, I definitely I came back to race a half Ironman a few, like, I guess 5 months later. And I did great, but I think I hadn't still really dealt with like the systemic kind of just stress on my body. And so it's probably a silver lining that there are no races really happening. And so I don't feel rushed at all and can just take my time.
Yeah, no, that's really important. I find that I have a bike on a trainer.
Okay.
But my favorite thing is like I just sit on it and read like this. I'm just sitting there reading, just doing a little spinning, but it's like barely anything. Like
it's so good for your legs, though.
Oh,
yeah.
no, I gotta like,
I know.
this sucks. But no, it's so great. Biking is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it, and we have some good gravel riding here, and it's just, I like to keep getting outside. I definitely need that for my mental health, but between dog walks and some riding and stuff, I'll get that fixed.
Well, I want to extend a congratulations again, and thank you so much for doing this at such short notice. I was like not expecting anyone to respond for like 2 weeks, and I was like, you just sleep, you do whatever, like I will be here when you're ready. And no, you were great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me back.
And if anybody also wants to follow Alyssa and listen to our pre-race interview, our pre-run interview a couple weeks ago, it was great. And if you want to follow her, it's at Alyssa Godesky and alyssagodesky.com. And thank you so much again for coming on the Trails Collective YouTube. Alyssa, have a good rest of your off time.
Thanks so much, Allie. Talk to you soon.
Bye.